All right, we got another question right over here.
Hi, I find that that most of the skepticism around social media, but Twitter in particular, comes from, say, let's call it the professional industry. So could you guys give us some insight into the three top reasons that somebody in the professional industry, an accountant, a lawyer, doctor, architect, something like that, would want to use Twitter? And if they did, what are the top three tools that they would use?
I don't know if they want to use Twitter. You might not be right.
Doctor?
Yeah.
But let's say they did.
Okay, let's say they want to for personal reasons or professional reasons. Again, they have to really figure out if it's right. My gut would be, if you're an architect and you may find a community of people who are really interested in architecture on Twitter. I don't think that would be a stretch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that would be a group of people you could engage with around your thoughts or anything, and whatever you can say that would bring value to the discussion. So I think an architect, you could build a community around a Twitter account about architecture. Medicine even too, I suppose. Like you
Talk
could.
about the industry in general.
Yeah, but I mean, then you're talking about there are regulatory issues and all kinds of other stuff. You can't be seen to be giving advice, all that kind of stuff.
I think Twitter's an amazing tool for all those groups, and the way that I would use it in those cases is it's a great way to influence the influencers, and the way I talk to my clients about that is like, if there's a New York Times writer who's writing an article about architecture and it's coming out on Sunday, long before the New York Times article ever comes out in the paper, he's saying, I'm cabbing across town to meet with this architecture firm for the article coming up, or I'm studying neo-Baroque, whatever, in this area. And so you have a chance to crawl right into his brain as the thoughts are still forming, before the opinions are set, and you have a chance to interject yourself into that. So you can say, yeah, that architecture firm you're meeting's great, and then there's these other three. Or yeah, that architecture firm's great, but did you hear that their bridge fell down? Or you have all these different opportunities to get in there and actually communicate with these people long before the analyst report comes out or the New York Times report comes out or different things like that.
Well, and I think you raise a good point too, and that is, on the flip side of that coin is that a lot of journalists are on Twitter. There's a site called muckrack.com, and what they've done is aggregate, and it's an opt-in. They've aggregated all of the journalists that are on Twitter, and trust me, many journalists pick up tips and direction for stories from Twitter, like emerging trends, absolutely. But the long and short of it is, if you think you can bring value, go for it.
Right.
If you think you have something to add. But if you're just going to go, hey, $1.99 off toilet paper today, although that could be adding value depending on your perspective, limited success. And I think the biggest risk factor, the biggest sort of failure that you typically see within the enterprise around social media is they build it and nobody comes because they're not adding value.
Right.
If an individual professional wanted to start using Twitter for whatever reasons, what are the top three tools? Because there's hundreds of tools out there. It's such a maze for these guys to try to get through. What are the top three tools? And maybe, Dario, you can specifically.
The top three Twitter tools?
Yeah, that you would suggest a professional to use.
Well, absolutely. The tool we built, Hootsuite, is fantastic. I encourage you to check it out. It really is excellent. It really is best in class, and I feel safe saying that.
And to be more general, on top of Twitter, it's often useful to have a great Twitter client. So that could be either something like
TweetDeck is great.
Yeah, like I use Twitter phone on my iPhone. Hootsuite's awesome, especially if you're managing multiple accounts or if you have multiple people managing one account. These are like unique kind of edge cases around the Twitter platform. Yeah. What did you say you use? TweetDeck?
TweetDeck,
TweetDeck's awesome.
Like Twitter crack. I have to turn it off during the day.
Yeah, I think that's
it's
good.
really
Yeah,
good.
so your top three things would be like a mobile client, a client for your computer, and then something like search.twitter.com or
a tool that has search.twitter.com built into it.
Yeah.
Which I think is key because
Which most do.
On the searching side, if you are going to be starting in this, and particularly in professional services where I would think to a certain extent it's a cultural change in terms of, because it's largely a knowledge-based industry and reputation. So listening, going out there and spending probably the first however long, actually going out and listening to what's going on before you start sending out messages.
I think that's a great suggestion. I got a 3-week program for people, which involves the first week of listening, the second week of just responding back to people, and then by the third week you're allowed to talk.
Yeah.
Allowed to.